I landed at O'Hare at 6:47 on a Friday evening, exhausted down to the marrow after a week-long physical therapy conference in Seattle. My feet ached. My brain was running on hotel coffee and 4 hours of sleep. All I wanted was the silence of my own home, the particular quiet of the place I had bled and scraped and sacrificed to own. I didn't get it. What I got instead, when I stepped off the elevator on the 4th floor of my building, was the sound of a television I didn't own blasting through my own front door, the greasy smell of someone else's food drifting into the hallway, and the unmistakable sight of a pair of men's work boots sitting in the spot where my welcome mat used to be. I stopped in the middle of the hallway, my rolling suitcase handle still gripped in my fingers, and I stared at those boots. They were worn down at the heel, caked with dried mud along the toe. Size 12, at least. I wear a women's size 7. I did not own those boots. I did not have a boyfriend. I did not have a roommate. I had not sublet my home. I had not given anyone permission to be inside my condo while I was gone, with one exception: the spare key. 6 months earlier, during a particularly brutal winter storm that knocked out power across half the city for 3 days, I had given my mother a spare key. Just in case the pipes freeze, I had told her. Just in case there's a leak or the smoke alarm goes off. She lived 40 minutes away, and I felt better knowing someone responsible had access. I had believed, genuinely and completely, that my mother was responsible. I stood outside my own front door and listened. The television was loud enough that whoever was inside hadn't heard the elevator or my footsteps. I could hear 2 voices underneath the noise, a man's low rumble and a woman's higher pitch, laughing. They were laughing, in my home, on a Friday night, as if they had not a single concern in the world. My hand went to my phone. My thumb hovered over my mother's contact. Then I stopped. I opened the smart home app instead. The one linked to my front door lock, my thermostat, my Ring camera. I had installed the system 18 months ago, when a neighbor's unit had been broken into, and I had mostly forgotten about it. But the app remembered everything. The log showed my door had been accessed on Monday morning, 2 days after I left for Seattle, at 11:23 a.m. The access code used was not mine. It was the spare physical key, which wouldn't have registered, which meant someone had also figured out or been given my door lock code. I scrolled to the camera footage. My stomach dropped so fast, I had to put one hand against the wall. Monday, 11:23 a.m. My brother Derek walked through my front door carrying a duffel bag. Behind him, a young woman I had met exactly twice carried a cardboard box. Behind her came another man I had never seen, hauling what appeared to be a television stand. They were not checking on my pipes. They were moving in. I sat with that knowledge for a full 30 seconds, there in the hallway of my own building, my suitcase beside me, my feet still aching from the airport. I thought about calling my mother first. I thought about giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, the way I always did, the way I had been conditioned to do since childhood. Then I thought about Derek's boots on my welcome mat, and the stranger carrying furniture into my home, and the camera footage I now had timestamped on my phone. I opened my contacts and scrolled past my mother's name. I called the non-emergency police line. To understand why this moment was inevitable, you have to understand Derek. My brother is 34 years old. He is charming in the way that only truly reckless people can be: magnetic, funny, always the loudest person in any room. He is also the kind of man who has never once in his adult life faced a consequence that wasn't immediately cushioned by our parents. He was evicted from his first apartment at 26 and moved back home. Our father, who was still alive then, bought him a car. He totaled it. Our mother made the insurance claim with a creative interpretation of what had happened and bought him another one. He was let go from 3 different jobs in 4 years, and each time, my mother found a way to frame it as the employer's fault. He was magnetic and brilliant, and the world simply didn't deserve him. That was the official family narrative. I was the other narrative. I was the one who worked 2 jobs through college, who graduated with a degree in physical therapy, and immediately started paying off my student loans, who shared a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 other women for 4 years, until I had saved enough for a down payment. I was the one who ate lunch at my desk and said no to every vacation and every unnecessary purchase until the day I walked into a real estate closing at 27 years old and signed my name on the deed to a condo that was mine, no cosigner, no parental help. My name, my down payment, my mortgage. My mother had smiled at that closing. She had hugged me and said she was proud. But I had seen the flicker behind her eyes, the mental calculation, the slight turn of her head toward the empty chair where she'd placed her purse. I hadn't understood it then. I understood it perfectly now. The officer arrived in 11 minutes. I was still in the hallway. I hadn't knocked. I hadn't announced myself. I had simply waited, my phone in my hand, the camera footage queued up and ready. Officer Hendricks was a woman, compact and unhurried, with close-cropped hair and the kind of steady gaze that made people tell the truth. I showed her the app before I said a single word. She watched the Monday footage without expression, then looked at the door, then looked at me. "This is your name on the deed?" she asked. "My name only," I confirmed. "I can pull it up on the county recorder's website right now if you need." "We can verify that," she said. "Is there anyone else authorized to be on this property?" "No one," I said. "I gave my mother a physical spare key for emergencies, but she is not on the deed, not on the lease, and I did not give her or anyone else permission to access this unit while I was traveling." Officer Hendricks nodded once, the slow nod of a person who has heard this exact story before with different names in different hallways. "Okay," she said. "Let's knock." What happened when that door opened is something I have replayed many times. Derek answered it in a t-shirt and sweatpants that were not his, because I recognized the sweatpants as a pair I had left in the closet. He looked at Officer Hendricks first, startled, then looked past her and saw me. The expression on his face cycled through about 4 emotions in under 2 seconds. Surprise, guilt, and then, impossibly, irritation, as if I were the inconvenience. "Ellie," he said, using the nickname I had asked him to stop using when I was 15. "Maya," I corrected, my voice flat. "Officer Hendricks, this is my brother Derek." "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification," Hendricks said, stepping slightly forward. "It's fine," Derek said, waving a hand, already performing for the audience. "This is a family misunderstanding. My sister and I just need to talk." "Identification, sir," Hendricks repeated, and the tone of her voice left no room for charm. The woman I had met twice was sitting on my couch. I could see her over Derek's shoulder. She was younger than I'd remembered, maybe 24, with tired eyes and a blankness about her expression that came from having been in too many rooms where things went badly. Her name was Simone. She stood up slowly when she saw the officer. Derek produced his license. Hendricks wrote down the information with the unhurried efficiency of someone who was not going to be charmed, hurried, or confused. "Ma'am," Hendricks said, "this unit is registered to one Maya Calloway. Are you aware that you are on private property without the owner's authorization?" Derek cut in before Simone could answer. "My mother gave me the key. She's a co-owner. She authorized us to stay here while Maya was out of town." "My mother is not a co-owner," I said, keeping my voice steady with effort that cost me something real. "Her name appears nowhere on this deed. She was given a physical key for emergency access at my discretion, which I am now revoking." "You can't revoke family," Derek said. And he laughed, the same loose, dismissive laugh my father used to use when he wanted to signal that a conversation was beneath him. "Sir," Hendricks said, snapping her notebook shut, "I'm going to ask you to collect your personal belongings and vacate this property. If you refuse, I have grounds to detain you for criminal trespass. The property owner has the right to ask you to leave, and she is asking." The laugh faded. Derek looked at me with something I hadn't seen on his face in a long time. It wasn't anger. It was something smaller and uglier than anger. It was the look of a man who had never actually been told no by anyone with the authority to make it stick. "Call Mom," he said. "I'm not calling Mom," I said. "Maya." His voice shifted, dropping the performance, going somewhere quieter and almost human. "We have nowhere to go. Simone's pregnant. We've been staying in my car for 2 weeks. Mom told me you wouldn't mind, that you'd want to help. She said she was going to call you." I looked at Simone. She was looking at the floor. The blankness on her face had cracked slightly, and underneath it was something raw and she was pregnant. She had been living in a car. None of that was her fault. but none of it was mine to absorb either. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it, not for him but for her. "You need to leave tonight." "I'll explain everything shortly, but you need to leave." Derek called our mother from the parking lot, while Officer Hendricks supervised the removal of the television stand, the 2 duffel bags, and a collection of grocery bags containing food they had apparently purchased with the assumption of long-term habitation. Hendricks allowed me to change my door code before they finished. I stood by the door and did it while Derek argued on the phone 10 feet away. I could hear my mother's voice through his phone, thin and agitated. "He has nowhere to go." She kept repeating it. "He has nowhere to go, Maya." What kind of person does this? I closed my door and leaned my back against it, and let out a breath that I had been holding since the elevator. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. Because here is the thing about me that my family never fully accounted for. I am methodical. I am thorough. I was not going to stop at trespass, because trespass felt like the surface of something much deeper. I had seen the look on Derek's face when I said my mother wasn't a co-owner. It was too specific. It was the look of someone who had been told otherwise, and believed it, and was now recalculating. My mother had told Derek that she was a co-owner of my condo. I pulled up the county property records. My name only. I pulled up my mortgage documents, scanned and stored in a cloud folder I had maintained with obsessive precision since the day I bought the unit. My name only. I pulled up my homeowner's insurance policy, and there I found it. 3 months ago, someone had called my insurance company and attempted to add a secondary policyholder to my account. The attempt had been flagged and denied because the caller could not answer the security questions correctly, but the attempt had generated a record. The phone number attached to the attempt was my mother's cell phone. She had tried to get herself added to my insurance policy. Without telling me, without asking me, she had called my insurance company and tried to insert herself into the legal documentation of my home. I sat with that for a long moment. The television was gone and the apartment was quiet now, the particular quiet I had dreamed about on the flight home from Seattle. It didn't feel the way I had imagined it would. My phone rang. My mother. I answered it. "How could you do this?" she said before I could speak. The crying was already in her voice, practiced and immediate. "He's your brother. Simone is pregnant. They have nowhere to sleep tonight, and you called the police on your own family." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "Did you tell Derek that you were a co-owner of my condo?" Silence. "Mom, I told him you would help," she said carefully. "I told him you had the space, and that family takes care of family." "That's not what he said. He said you told him you were a co-owner, that you authorized his access." "Maya, you're twisting my words. Did you call my insurance company 3 months ago and try to add yourself as a secondary policyholder?" The silence this time was different. It had a texture to it. "I was trying to protect you," she said finally. "If something happened to you, someone needed to be able to manage the property. You're single, Maya. You have no one. What if you had been in an accident in Seattle? What if? Then my estate would go to whoever I designate in my will," I said. "Which I have, which you are not in, because this is my property, Mom. My name, my money, my mortgage. And you tried to put your name on it without asking me, and then you gave my brother a key and told him he had the right to be there. He is your family," she said, and her voice hardened, the crying receding like a tide going out to reveal the rocks underneath, "your flesh and blood. And you're sitting in that big empty condo all by yourself, no husband, no children, just hoarding space and money, while your brother's girlfriend sleeps in a car. What does that say about you, Maya? What kind of person does that make you?" "It makes me the legal owner of the property," I said. "And I'd like you to return my spare key." She hung up. I did not sleep well that night. I don't think I was supposed to. The guilt came the way it always did in my family, not as a conversation or a reckoning, but as a slow gas leak, invisible and suffocating. I lay in my bed in my silent apartment and thought about Simone's face. I thought about the tiredness behind her eyes. I thought about what it meant to be pregnant and living in someone's car in October in Chicago. But I also thought about something Derek had said while Officer Hendricks was watching him load his bags. He had said it quietly, almost to himself, not realizing I was close enough to hear. He'd said, "I already told the guys at work it was mine." He had already told people at work the condo was his. I got up at 5:30 a.m. and started digging. It took me 45 minutes to find it. Derek had a public Facebook profile, privacy settings set to friends of friends, which meant enough of my mutual contacts could see it. 3 weeks ago, he had posted in a Chicago neighborhood housing group. He had posted photos of my condo, photos of my kitchen, my living room, my spare bedroom, and listed it as available for subletting. $350 a week, utilities included, private bedroom in a 2-bedroom unit, immediate availability. He had been planning to charge a stranger to sleep in my spare bedroom. My spare bedroom, in my home, that he did not own and had accessed with a key my mother handed him without my knowledge. He had not been planning to mention any of this to me. I screenshotted everything. Then I went to his profile more carefully. The post was still up, though no one appeared to have responded to it. But in his photos, going back about 2 months, I found something that made my chest go cold. There were pictures of him with friends, at a bar, at what looked like a birthday party. In those pictures, Derek was wearing a gold watch I recognized. It was my father's watch, the one thing of my father's I had kept after he passed, the one that was supposed to be in my fireproof box in my closet. I went to my closet. I opened the box. The watch was not there. My mother had been in my home. She had gone into my closet, opened my fireproof box, and taken my father's watch to give to Derek. Or Derek had taken it himself, while he had unrestricted access to my home for 5 days. I sat on the floor of my closet for a long time. Then I called Officer Hendricks's direct number from the card she had given me the night before. "It's Maya Calloway," I said when she answered. "I have additional information. I think this goes beyond trespass." The next 72 hours moved with the exhausting momentum of a train that I had started and could not stop. Hendricks connected me with a detective who handled property crimes. I brought the screenshots, the insurance attempt record, the Facebook subletting post, and the missing watch. The detective was a tired-looking man named Okonkwo, who had the particular energy of someone who had seen human behavior at its most mundane and disappointing, and had long ago made peace with that knowledge. He looked at everything I showed him, without visible surprise. "The subletting post is significant," he said, "especially combined with the unauthorized access. It shows intent to derive financial benefit from property that isn't his. And the watch? Do you have documentation that it belonged to you? A photo, insurance record, anything with the serial number. I had the receipt from when my father bought it, which I had kept in the same fireproof box because my father was also methodical. I had photos of him wearing it. I had photos of it in the box, time-stamped from before I left for Seattle." Detective Okonkwo wrote everything down. "I want to be clear about what you're initiating," he said, echoing the same cautionary tone Officer Hendricks had used. "Theft charges, criminal trespass with intent to profit, potential fraud connected to the insurance attempt. This doesn't stay in the family, Miss Calloway. The DA's office takes it from here." "I know," I said. "Your mother's involvement with the insurance company." "I know," I said again. He looked at me for a moment. "Okay," he said. "My aunt called on Saturday morning. My mother's older sister, the unofficial communications director of the extended family. Her voice was warm and reasonable, which meant she had been assigned to be the good cop. Your mother is beside herself," she said. "And I want you to know I'm not taking sides, Maya. I'm just asking you to consider the situation from a place of compassion. Derek made a mistake. He thought he had permission. The baby is due in 4 months. Simone has no family in Chicago. Is there any version of this where you give them a few weeks to find something else? He tried to rent out my spare bedroom to a stranger," I said. A pause. "I'm sorry?" He posted my condo on Facebook as available for subletting, $350 a week. He had been in my home for 5 days. He was going to charge someone to sleep in my apartment without my knowledge and presumably keep the money. Silence on the line. My aunt was processing. "And someone took my father's watch," I added. "The one I kept. It's in Derek's photos on Facebook." Another silence, longer. "Maya," she said, and her voice had changed. The warmth was still there, but the assignment was gone. She was speaking as herself now. Is any of that is there documentation? Screenshots of the Facebook post. Time-stamped photos of the watch before I left. Photos of Derek wearing it after. And my insurance company has a record of an unauthorized call from my mother's number trying to add her name to my policy. My aunt was quiet for so long, I thought the call had dropped. I need to make some calls of my own, she said finally. I'll be in touch. She was in touch 4 hours later. A family meeting, she said. Sunday afternoon, her house. Not my parents'. She wanted a neutral location. She wanted to understand what had actually happened before anyone said anything else they couldn't take back. I said I would come. I went prepared. My aunt's house was full when I arrived. My mother was there, sitting very still in the armchair by the window, not crying now, just watching. Derek and Simone were on the couch, Derek's jaw set, Simone staring at her hands. My cousin James, who was the closest thing to a rational actor on my mother's side, sat beside my aunt at the kitchen table. He gave me a look when I came in that said he had already been briefed and was not entirely unsympathetic. "Thank you all for being here," my aunt said. She was standing, which told me she intended to run this meeting like a meeting rather than a family drama. "Maya, I asked you to come because I think some things need to be said out loud, in front of everyone, so we stop operating on separate versions of the truth. Can you walk us through what happened from your perspective?" I did. I said it all plainly and without raising my voice, because I had practiced, and because I knew that the moment I seemed emotional, the narrative would pivot to my instability rather than their actions. I told them about coming home to my occupied condo. I told them about the camera footage. I told them about the subletting post and the watch. I told them about the insurance call. The room was very quiet by the time I finished. My mother spoke first. "I did what I thought was best for this family," she said, and her voice was tired rather than defensive. "Your father is gone. Derek needs support. You have the means to help, and you have chosen, over and over, to live like you have no family at all." "I don't live like that," I said. "I pay for Christmas every year. I paid for Derek's lawyer when he had that issue in 2021. I lent him $4,000 that I never saw again. I am not refusing to help Derek. I am refusing to be stolen from. He didn't steal. Mom." My cousin James's voice was quiet but firm. He posted her apartment on Facebook to rent it out. He took her father's watch. That's theft. Those are two separate thefts. My mother looked at James as if he had struck her. "I gave him the watch," she said, and the room shifted. "I gave it to him because he is the man of this family now, and it should belong to him." "That watch belonged to Maya," James said. "Dad left it to her specifically." We were there for the reading. "Things change," my mother said. "Priorities change. Derek is starting a family. He needed to not rent out my home to a stranger," I said. Simone made a sound. It was small, just an intake of breath, but everyone in the room heard it. She was looking at Derek. "Is that true?" she said. "You posted the apartment? You were going to rent out her room." "It wasn't like that," Derek said. "What was it like?" Simone asked. "I was trying to take care of us. We needed money, and Maya wasn't using the space." "Maya wasn't using the space because Maya was at a work conference," James said. "In a home she owns and pays for alone." "Derek." Simone's voice was very careful now, very controlled. "How long were we supposed to stay there? What was the plan?" Derek didn't answer immediately, which was its own answer. "Did you tell me the truth about anything?" Simone said. She wasn't crying. She looked the way I imagine people look when something they suspected for a long time is finally confirmed. Resigned and clear-eyed and very, very tired. "You said your mom owned it with Maya. You said it was basically yours. You said we just needed to wait until Maya came back, and she'd be fine with it because family helps family." "She should be fine with it," Derek said. And there was an edge in his voice now. "She has all of this," he gestured vaguely. "And we have nothing. She has a career and a condo, and she's saving up for a house. Meanwhile, I can't catch a single break." "You posted her home on the internet to rent it out without asking her," Simone said. "That is not a break. That is stealing." The room was very still. "I need to tell you something else," I said, because this was the moment, the same way I imagine a surgeon commits to the incision. I had been sitting on one more piece of information. I went back through Derek's housing history. I know about the eviction in Wicker Park in 2021. I know about the one before that in 2019. I know about the security deposit he kept from a sublet tenant 2 years ago, which is why he can't rent in his own name in Cook County anymore. My mother went white. There is no landlord in Chicago who will rent to Derek, I said, looking at Simone, because she was the one who needed this. That is not because of bad luck. It is because of a documented pattern that goes back 6 years. Mom has been paying to clean up those records wherever she can, but some of it is public, and I have printed all of it. I put the folder on the coffee table. Simone looked at it. She didn't open it. She looked at Derek instead, for a long time, with the expression of a woman doing a very specific kind of math in her head. The kind of math that accounts for the next 4 months and the 4 years after that, and what it means to be tied by a child to someone who will always need someone else to absorb the damage they cause. I need some air, Simone said. She stood up, moved past everyone, and went out through the back door into my aunt's yard. I followed her. She was standing on the back porch, with her arms wrapped around herself, looking at the fence. The October air was sharp and cold and smelled like someone's fireplace, a few streets over. I'm sorry, I said. I know this is a lot. I knew something was wrong, she said. He kept telling me not to worry about it, that it was all figured out. But you don't live in someone's car for 2 weeks when it's all figured out. She paused. How long have you known about the evictions? Since yesterday, she nodded slowly. Your mom knew this whole time, didn't she? She knew we couldn't rent anywhere, and she thought if she could just get you to let us stay. I think she thought if I came home to the situation already in place, I'd feel too guilty to undo it, I said. She was wrong. Simone turned and looked at me. I have a sister in Indianapolis, she said. She's been asking me to come stay with her since I found out I was pregnant. I kept saying no because Derek didn't want to leave Chicago. She paused. I think I need to call her. I think that sounds right, I said. Would you? She stopped, started again. Is there anything I can do? About your watch? I didn't know he had it, I swear. I believe you, I said, and he's going to return it, one way or another. That's not your problem to solve. We stood outside for another minute, 2 women in the cold who had been handed a situation we didn't create and were separately working out how to survive it. Then I went back inside. Derek was arguing with my cousin James in a low, tense voice. My mother was sitting completely still, staring at the folder on the table, which she had not touched, which somehow seemed worse. My aunt was at the kitchen counter with her back to the room, and I could tell from the set of her shoulders that she was recalculating every assumption she had held about the family dynamic for the past decade. I want the watch back by tomorrow, I said to Derek. You can drop it at the front desk of my building. If it is not there by 6 p.m. tomorrow, I will add it to the police report. You're really doing this, Derek said. Yes, I said. I really am. Over a watch. Over a watch. Over my home. Over 5 years of being the person this family treats as an ATM, with feelings. Yes, Derek. I am really doing this. My mother made a sound, soft and broken. I just wanted the family to stay together, she said to the room, to no one. After your father died, I couldn't watch you two drift apart. I thought if you helped him, if you let him in, it would. Mom, I said, and my voice came out gentler than I expected, because she looked very old in that moment, very small in that chair. And I understood, even as I was furious, that grief makes people do desperate and irrational things. I love you, but what you did was not love. What you did was use me to avoid having a hard conversation with Derek about his choices. And that ends today. She didn't answer. I didn't expect her to. That particular conversation was going to take much longer than one Sunday afternoon to complete, if it ever did at all. I left my aunt's house at 4:15 p.m. and drove back to my building. My parking space was empty and clean, the way it always was, the way I had come to take for granted until 48 hours ago, when I had learned that things I took for granted were not guaranteed. The watch was at my building's front desk the next morning at 8 a.m. Derek had dropped it overnight. There was no note. Detective Okonkwo called me that afternoon and I told him the situation had partially resolved, that the trespass had been addressed and the stolen item returned. He noted it on the file and explained that the criminal trespass with intent and the insurance fraud attempt would still be reviewed by the DA's office regardless of my preferences, which I had understood and accepted. Simone did go to Indianapolis. Her sister had driven through the night to come get her. My aunt told me later that Derek had not taken it well. He had shown up at my parents' house and had a long, loud argument with my mother that apparently ended with my mother telling him, for the first time in his adult life, that she did not have any more money to give him and that he needed to figure it out. I don't know what came next for Derek. I changed my locks, revoked every spare key in circulation, and filed the restraining order against him specifically, with documentation that Detective Okonkwo helped me prepare. The judge signed it without apparent hesitation. My mother and I did not speak for 8 weeks. When we finally talked, it was short and formal, a phone call about a piece of mail she had received for me at her address from years ago. Neither of us referenced the condo. Neither of us referenced the watch. We were building something different from what we'd had, something more honest and much smaller, and I was still deciding how I felt about that. What I knew was this. I came home to my apartment after all of it was settled, on a Wednesday evening in November, and the silence was the silence I had always wanted. Clean and mine. I made dinner. I sat at my kitchen table. I looked around at the walls and the furniture, and the small accumulated evidence of a life I had built by myself, for myself, without anyone's permission or approval. My father's watch was back on its hook in the closet. I took it out and held it for a moment. It was heavier than it looked, the way the things we inherit from the people we've lost always are. I put it back carefully and closed the closet door. Some people will spend their entire lives trying to make others feel guilty for having what they themselves refuse to build. The only protection against that is the simple, unremarkable act of knowing exactly what belongs to you and being willing to say so out loud when someone reaches for it. I poured myself a glass of wine. I sat by the window. The city moved below me, indifferent and bright and entirely unimpressed, the way cities always are. It tasted like everything I had earned,